Welcome into WagerTalk TV. I am Drew Martin, joined by Tony, Finn, and Rob Vino of WagerTalk.com. We're talking NFL action here. The Cincinnati Bengals, New Orleans Saints, 1 o'clock Eastern kick, October 16th, Sunday kick here, Tony. What are you liking with the Bengals and the Saints?
Man, I was all over the Bengals last week. They were a big play for me. I threw them in some teasers, and I really liked them. This is a game, it concerns me. It concerns me for several reasons. One, because if we can wrap our arms around this New Orleans team and be confidently accurate with who they're going to be on any given Sunday, then I would say if I was accurate, it would be a better guess than it would be an assessment, because I've been wrong about them. I haven't been on them or against them all year. And I'm glad, because every time I assess them, I do a poor job. I mean, the Jameis Winston injury, the Taysom Hill, he carries the Saints to a victory, against Seattle. Now, again, this was Seattle. We talked a little bit off air about teams that came from London, and they didn't take their bye. They wanted to go ahead and play. Maybe New Orleans chose to do this because it was Seattle. I think that's pretty difficult to do in the preseason, but maybe they're smarter than the average NFL bear. I don't know, but I'll say this, and that is when Seattle loses Rashard Penny and they score 32 points and still lose a game. New Orleans has a whole different scenario and a whole different opponent this weekend in Cincinnati. The problem I have with Cincinnati is that this offense, they're still not right. They're still, if you saw last week's game, for instance, Cincinnati stayed within the number, did a good job for me. I cashed with them. But when they don't score 20 points, they're struggling. I mean, they haven't won a game. If they don't score 20 points, they can't win. And I'm having a problem with this team, not defensively, but offensively. And they're shutting down. Everybody is just is either bracketing, doubling, or playing chase really physical at the line of scrimmage. That game against Baltimore last week, on Sunday, and I don't want to say last week, but last weekend, it was a game that I thought Cincinnati played pretty well. I thought it was a game that they probably were going to come back and defeat Baltimore again and have Baltimore have to carry that losing big lead stigma into week after week after week. But Mr. Reliable, maybe the best kicker of all time in the NFL, kicks another fourth quarter. He had missed a fourth quarter kick or an overtime kick in how many? 30, just ridiculous amount of games. And Baltimore pulls it out. They win. But this offensive line's not very good for the Bengals. It's just not very good. Last year, they were able to do a lot of things that they're not doing this year. They surprised people last year. The Burrow to Chase was stupid good. And they did some things. They came up with some good bounces defensively. This is a tough situation for Cincinnati. However, I think this is a statement game for the Bengals. This is a game that if they're going to be a qualifier for the postseason, this is a game they have to win. And for New Orleans, who's 2-3, and I'm sure they're confident. They're confident after last week's scoring 39 points that they can do the same thing, or at least hold Cincinnati down. Defensively, they're supposed to be better defensively than they are offensively. Everyone says they are. I'm not so certain. But a lot of injuries. Are we going to have Thomas? Who's going to be a quarterback? So I'm not in this room, guys. I don't have a lot of confidence in being able to assess this game properly. However, if I have a lean, and I do, it's to the Saints getting the points here, even though the line's going the other way.
All right, a little home dog action in the Big Easy here, Rob Vino. We're seeing the Cincinnati Bengals -1.5, -2 on the road, 44 the total. What are you liking in New Orleans?
Yeah, I think, Tony started to make the point. I'll try and add a little bit to it, but, we do these things early week, and right now the Saints' entire wide receiving core is questionable. Not only the entire wide receiving core being questionable, Jameis Winston's questionable. 2 of their starting 4 in the secondary are questionable. Marcus May, strong safety. Marshawn Lattimore, their best cornerback. It's hard to assess these games when you have that many question marks. So make sure that during the week, you guys that are watching the video, just clarify some of these injuries, because for New Orleans, those are big, big pieces. They can't move the ball without a wide receiving core. That's been shown. But they do move it a little better on the ground with Alvin Kamara. That was shown. However, again, to Tony's point, how much of that was Seattle just being atrocious on defense? I don't know who's worse, them or Detroit, but somebody's worse. Neither one can stop anybody. So maybe the 39 points a little bit phony posted by New Orleans yesterday. I think what's interesting about these teams, guys, real quick, is they've been great second half teams. First half, not so much. Second half, they've been great. Cincinnati has some perfect trends in the second half. For those who might want to sit back, let the first half play out, and come back in the second half. Right now, the Bengals are 5-0 to the under in the second half this season. They're also 5-0 against the spread second half this season. 4-0 as a favorite second half. 1-0 as a dog second half. As far as the unders in the second half are concerned, their games average going under by 6.9 points per game. And they're also 5-0 to the under full game. Speaks a little bit to maybe being a little bit overpriced where totals are concerned, because they're known as an offensive team. And it speaks a lot to what they've done defensively so far this season, because they have played very, very good on the defensive side of the ball. The Saints' second half trends, Cincinnati's a 5-0 under team. Second half, the Saints are a 5-0 over team. So right away, you get conflicting numbers. The Saints have gone over the total second half by an average of 8.5 per game. They're 4-1 against the spread. They're a good second half team as well. So could be a battle down to the wire. Cincinnati's seen enough battles down to the wire. This team is as close to 5-0 as you can be with a 2-3 record. Remember that they missed an extra point on the final play of the Pittsburgh game. Score a touchdown on the last play, get the extra point blocked, have to go to overtime, lose. They lose to Dallas on the last play of the game, a 50-yard field goal. As Tony mentioned, they lose to Baltimore last week, last play of the game, Justin Tucker field goal. So the three losses have all been right there for the taking for the Bengals. They're not that far off. It kind of goes to show how razor thin the margin is between victory and defeat. I think the key matchups here all exist between the Cincinnati offense and New Orleans defense. Yeah, the offensive line that they bought and paid for and thought they had straightened out hasn't been good overall-wise this year, but they've allowed 19 sacks on the year, guys. The Bengals offensive line has. But 13 of those were in the first 2 games of the year. Last 3 games, Joe Burrow's only gone down 6 times in 3 games. So they've made really big improvements here in that area. New Orleans has had a pretty good pass rush their last 3 games. 3 sacks in each of their last 3. So you got the combination of a team playing better pass rush-wise, a team playing better pass protection-wise. Who wins that battle? You got to decide yourself. And I think what may end up deciding this is that Cincinnati wide receiving core against the Saints secondary. And I'm one that for years, let's go back maybe about 5-6 years, the Saints secondary just puts their hands all over people. So I went and I checked the penalties for the season so far. When you're going to be chasing, that's kind of a pun, right? Jamar Chase and the other 2 wide receivers there, Higgins and Boyd, and also Hayden Hurst at tight end. It's quite a task. And for New Orleans, they lead the NFL right now in defensive holding penalties. They've got 7. The league average is 2.5, so they're way above league average. They've had 3 defensive pass interference calls that have cost them 107 total yards. And I could see penalties from this secondary playing a big game and a big role in what's a pretty close game here. When they played the Vikings, I kind of set up the Bengals and the Vikings as comparative receiving cores. For the Vikings, you have Jefferson, Thielen, and KJ Osborne, kind of equivalent to the Bengals' top 3. And then you have a solid tight end over there. In that game, Saints got called for 3 defensive holdings and 1 41-yard PI. It could be an issue here for New Orleans grabbing these guys. Schedule strength. The Saints have faced some really lousy defenses so far this year. 4 of the defenses they faced are either 20th or worse in the NFL. The Bengals come in at 13, so it's going to be one of the better defenses they played. The best defense that New Orleans saw all season long was Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay held them to 144 total yards, 2.2 yards a play. And in that game, Jameis started. Michael Thomas started. They didn't have Kamara, but they had the rest of their pieces, and they couldn't move the ball whatsoever. I'm not sure that they can move it enough in this game, but Cincinnati has had the benefit of playing some lousy offenses, so maybe their defensive numbers are skewed, right? They played Pittsburgh with Mitch Trubisky at quarterback. They played Dallas when Cooper Rush was making his first start. They played the Jets with Joe Flacco. They played Miami when Tua got knocked out in the second quarter. And last week they played the Ravens with no number one wide receiver, Rashad Bateman. So trying to make fact or fiction out of some of these numbers is difficult here. But in my mind, the Bengals right now have shown me they're probably the better team. New Orleans a little too inconsistent. Don't like the fact that the Bengals have to go on the road, but they've been on the road a lot this year, so I don't know the venue will bother them. I'd probably try Cincinnati, but again, I wouldn't be on this game until I knew what the status of all those New Orleans injuries are, because that's a lot of good players that are on that injury list right now.
He's Robbie Vino. You heard from Tony Finn as well. Check them both out. WagerTalk.com. A good day to do so is Tuesdays. $2 Tuesday. Top handicappers, top play, discounted to just $2. Check it out. WagerTalk.com.